Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I want to chat a little bit about mental health and how our mental well-being can be affected by what we eat and our general sort of health and wellness choices we make. I've just thought I'm going to put the camera on and just chat about what comes to mind. This wasn't, no pun intended there, not what comes to mind. Um, I wasn't going to discuss this today, but I ended up having a chat with my husband about various things. And he was saying to me about the changes I've made over the last 2.5 years. And he said, I don't know that this comment lands well with you, Elsa, but I am very proud of what you've achieved. And I know what he means when he says he doesn't know how it's going to land, because I think what I hear when I hear that is that someone's saying to me, I'm proud that you've lost weight, that you look better, that you look slimmer, etc. And he's not saying that. He's proud all round, although, undoubtedly a big part of it is my physical appearance. But what I was discussing with him, and he is well aware of this, is the massive effect it's had on my mental health and my mental well-being. So I wanted to dive into that a little bit because I think it's very interesting, the link between what we eat, our gut health, and how we feel. So, a little bit of history really about me is that I do have depression and anxiety, and I've had this, I would say, for the majority of my life. I just think it's something that I'm prone to. I don't know if it's a genetic element or what, but I've always had an element of it, and my depression has been a lot more severe in the past. I manage it. I am on antidepressants. Not, should be able to be open about that, shouldn't we? But I've had episodes of extremely bad depression and anxiety over the last, well, probably 20 years, certainly. And then I've had times where it's much better. But it's something that I live with and I acknowledge, and it's always there for me to a greater or lesser degree. Anxiety in particular has been more of a problem in the last few years because I think that has gone in hand with perimenopause and menopause. It is, excuse me, definitely a side effect of menopause. And I noticed as I started to become perimenopausal, I started to get different anxiety symptoms than I'd had before. For example, I would get a lot of unexplained, sudden onset anxiety at bedtime. When I was trying to settle in bed and go off to sleep, I'd be sort of gripped by this sort of panic and paranoia. And at first that was written off as just anxiety around, it was a time when Stuart was in hospital. But looking back, I can see that it was the beginning of my perimenopause. So, so basically I've been on some medication for my depression for a long time. I've had counselling and therapy, and it's something that I manage. And as I say, it ebbs and flows, as I'm sure it does for most people. But when I finally sort of made the decision to make big lifestyle changes, it wasn't, and it sounds very unbelievable to some people, it wasn't driven initially through wanting to be thin, to look better, if you like. A lot of it was prompted by mental health, because alongside dealing with, all the issues around my husband's health problems and the worry that brought to me, my own depression, my own anxiety, was this incredible mental distress that came along with the addiction of eating and the food addiction. I have spoken about it before, that I felt consistently under the control of this addictive pattern of eating, a pattern that left me feeling never satisfied, never full. I would constantly think about food, and I would get very, very low about it because it felt like I wasn't running my life, that food and addiction to food was running my life. And looking back, I can see it's not surprising when you are consuming a lot of processed foods, which are completely manufactured to drive addiction. Is it any wonder you end up addicted? And the effect that was having on my my physical body was that, my blood sugar was up and down like crazy. I was never fully satisfied. I was never satiated. And so I was driven into these patterns of overeating. And of course, if you're dealing with issues, what you end up doing is seeing food as a friend and seeing food as a way to deal with depression and anxiety and problems. Because when you can't block bad feelings and bad emotions out, you can smother them. And some people smother them with drugs of addiction, they smother them with alcohol, and I smothered them with food. And I know an awful lot of people do, and it leads you into this terribly destructive and depressing and life, altering pattern of you're low, you don't feel physically good, so you numb with food, but the food is adding to you not feeling good, and it just goes on and on and on. So that's where I was when I started to make these big changes. And I've spoken a lot about the changes I made, how I made them, and, all of that. I'll link some other videos at the end. But one of the surprising side effects of massively changing my diet and changing from a vegan whole food diet that was also topped up with an enormous amount of sugary, processed, fatty, addictive type of foods, to concentrating on, satiating whole foods, natural foods, no additives, no ultra processed foods, no ultra processed ingredients. Not only did it have this big physical transformation where I lost 7 stone, 100 pounds, it really has, over the last 2.5 years, improved my mental health immeasurably. And that for me is so important. And that was the point that I was trying to make to Stuart today, that if I had lost half the weight I lost, I mean, obviously I needed and wanted to lose some weight because I was obese. I was in a category that would have probably led me down a road to type 2 diabetes and other health concerns. So of course, take aside aesthetics, I wanted to lose some weight. But I could easily be heavier than I am now, but still in a healthiest range, if I felt this mentally good. I don't have to be sitting at the weight I am now, and I'm lower than I thought I would ever be. I'm a healthy weight, but I'm lower weight than I thought I would ever reach. But I would happily be 20 pounds heavier if I could still feel this mental improvement. And I think people struggle to understand that, because they think, well, no, you're just happy because you look thinner, or you're in a smaller dress size, you're living in a smaller body. But honestly, I think that unless you have walked this path, you don't understand, and how could you, the destructiveness of food addiction, how it controls your life, and how you don't feel pleasure. You don't feel pleasure from what you stuff in your mouth. You don't feel satisfaction, satiation, enjoyment. For me, it was this horrible self-destructive pattern where I would be scouring for food, pushing it in, pushing down emotions, and then of course it makes you feel worse. And I'm sure people that go on, people that struggle with alcohol, I'm sure when they go on a drinking binge, they don't feel better. At the end, they feel worse if they know that something, it makes them feel awful. And I think, I am not a doctor or a nutritionist, but it is proven that there is an incredibly strong link, isn't there, between your gut and your brain. And I think it's being developed, it's something we're understanding more and more each day, the gut-brain connection, how your gut microbiome actually massively affects how you think, your emotions, how you feel. And I can only give you my experience, but my real life lived experience is that I found myself today with my depression being definitely the majority of the time a lot better. I'm not getting those low dips and I'm talking about my day-to-day depression. I still have things that happen that can push me into a depression and a low. And I had a small mini episode this week where it was nothing very specific, but I had a couple of days where I felt really low. But because that's more unusual, I really noticed it. It's more unusual for me now. And I had to just acknowledge it, sit with it, and I reached out and chatted with someone, with a family member, and just talked through how I was feeling, and I have come back out of it a bit. I'm still feeling a little bit vulnerable, but I feel better than I did yesterday and the day before. But generally, on a day-to-day level, I'm having less of these dips, less of these highs and lows. My anxiety even has improved a bit. As I say, anxiety is something that is affected by the hormonal shift in our menopause. So I do get some really weird episodes of just unexplained anxiousness. I still get, for example, a bit of social anxiety after I've interacted with people, especially new people. I can have an element of anxiety afterwards, which I've always had. But maybe it's a little bit less. If I'm being honest, maybe it's 10-20% lower than it used to be, which is great. And but the depression, it's almost like I have to remind myself that that's changed. Because when you're just used to something and then gradually it changes, you forget that where you used to be. And so for me, it's just another reason why, if you are embarking on a change to how you eat, or if, for example, you're on one of these GLP-1 medications where you are being given an ability to sit back and assess how you eat, because that awful addiction thing is being turned down. However you come to that, I think that trying to address the quality of what we eat is not only going to affect your weight, but it can affect, your skin, your susceptibility to illnesses, your muscle mass composition, which is so vital in aging, but also your mental health. I feel more vibrant, and I know part of that comes from living in a smaller body, but I feel more energized. I was always someone who was a bit cup half empty. I remember saying to somebody once, and they found this quite funny. I said, I'm always happiest when I'm a little bit miserable, because I feel comfortable in that place. I know where I am. I know what to expect. And I would say that I am no longer that person. I used to very rarely look forward to things, which makes me sound like very sad. It's not. But I found it difficult to look forward to a holiday or a day out. I would almost be looking forward to when that event was over so that I could look back on it. Whereas now I find myself, and I noticed this first about a year ago when I went away with a friend to Spain for a short break, and I thought, God, I'm really, really excited about this trip. I'm really looking forward to it. And I had to check in with myself. I was like, what is this feeling? What am I feeling? I was like, oh, I'm feeling excitement. I'm feeling anticipation. I haven't felt this in years. And I have actually over the last year been able to slightly reduce my medication that I'm on. It's just, I can't extol the virtues of this way of eating enough, really. As I say, it's given me back physical health, but it's given me an element of mental health, of as I think I spoke in my last vlog, I'm trying to regain that curiosity around my creative life. And I just feel like I am slowly opening back up. And, I'm 2.5 years into this journey now, and I am still finding new benefits every day. I am feeling physically, in terms of what I eat, I'm satiated. I'm not craving stuff. I don't want to eat the stuff that I used to eat. I feel in control. I'm running the show, not my food and addiction running the show. But also, as I say, I'm feeling positive. I'm feeling better in the way I engage with friends and family. I'm feeling energized for things, excited for possibilities, and just generally like I'm coping better. And for me, that's just one of the best things. It really is. It really, really is. And I just think for me, it illustrates how strong that link is between our gut and our brain. And it just hammers home that point that mental well-being has to be part of the whole package, the whole holistic package. We can't be well as we get older if we're physically a wreck. We've got no muscle and we're obese or we're suffering with some sort of illness. But similarly, we can't be well if we're not socially connected, if we're not mentally well, if we're not addressing what brings us down, what makes us stay in and isolate from people, or what makes us feel sad. So, you know, it brought it home to me this week, this chat with Stuart, and also having had a couple of days of a slight dip, which I could identify why that dip had occurred. And as I say, I've come out of it a lot more quickly. So yeah, I just wanted to discuss that because I think, you know, we all too often, we see the effects of dietary change through just the lens of how much weight have you lost. And of course that's important, but it's about it's the whole package, isn't it? It's the whole package. And I see and feel that more than ever now. I'm 52. You know, it's so important to me. So I just want to finish this little vlog by just recapping my challenge for October, because it sort of ties in a bit with my mental well-being. So, I mean, we're almost at the end of the month. And if you recall, I'm just looking at my notes here, the challenge I sent myself was, the sort of smaller challenge was in anticipation of going to Paris soon, that I was going to practice my French language every day. And I have done that. I'm really enjoying it. I've been doing some listening work on some YouTube videos. I've been trying to write a journal. I'm reading a book. What I am sort of missing is the ability to do to chat, because I don't really have anyone to talk to. But I have certainly been doing a lot of listening comprehension and actually practicing speaking back and practicing sentences and things like that, you know, more common sentences and more colloquial pronunciation and stuff. Anyway, I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to go to Paris. I love France. I love speaking French. I've always loved languages. I always liked them at school, and I did French and German at school, and I've since learned Spanish, you know, at sort of an averagey level. And I don't know, I just find it really interesting. Anyway, so I've been doing that, but the main one was my phone use, and I set the sort of challenge to, in the daytime, I'm just reading what I said, I was going to keep the phone out of reach. I was going to watch YouTube and check my emails and everything on my laptop, and only use my phone really for podcasts, updating my Instagram when I was out of the house, and to receive messages. And then at night time, I was not going to read my phone in bed at all. I was only going to read books. And I was also going to make sure I put my reading glasses on when I was using my phone. So in terms of the glasses, I've been really good. I have been putting them on, I would say 90% of the time. The rest of the time, I've got the phone right up here in my face, which is naughty, but I'm working on it. I've got to be honest, I've struggled with the phone in the day. I was doing quite well. I'm just looking, I was filling it in. I'd say for the first sort of 2 weeks, I was doing quite well. I've got to say, the habit has slipped a little bit. It has slipped a little bit, I've got to be honest. I don't know why, just I've been weak. That's the only thing I can say. The phone's there and there's still that twitch. I've still got to break it, but I'm working on it. I would say it's definitely got better, because every week I get this sort of little roundup of my phone use report, and I have definitely improved. It's definitely a work in progress. Yeah, that's all I can say. It's a work in progress. I definitely have been looking online less, looking at the news less, because that just depresses me. Sort of doom scrolling less. But what I slip back into is watching some of my YouTube on the phone. So inevitably I watch it a bit more than if it was on the laptop. And yeah, that's the main thing really, I've got to be honest. But yeah, just sort of twittering away, looking at it too much. Nighttime, I was doing extremely well, and I was reading a lot more. But because my attention span is quite bad, and that's, as I say, that is a mix of being so addicted to the phone, and that, completely erodes your ability to pay attention, doesn't it? And also menopause. I find that what was happening at night was I was quite sometimes struggling to read. So I would listen to an audiobook or a podcast. But even with that, that would send me to sleep really quickly. And I would be a bit like almost out of it. So I'd be reading, but I was finding it hard to focus. Excuse me. And what I found was, as I found it harder to focus, there was a temptation to take the easy path and look at the phone instead. I didn't do it many nights, only I had 2, 3, 4 nights maximum I picked up the phone instead. So anyway, last week I thought, well, this is silly, this has got to change. And I've done something quite radical, because I've realised that if I look at anything at night time, it has a tendency to distract me. So for the last week, I've gone cold turkey. I get into bed and I don't look at anything. I just turn the light out. Now, I had thought, oh, well, I'm just going to lay there wide awake, because, as I've said before, I like to get to bed earlier than I used to, but I just wouldn't turn the light out. I just like to get up to bed. So what I've been doing is I've actually been turning the light out about 10:15, 10 o'clock, which is very early for me. I usually go up about 9:30 and I pootle about and, do my skincare and get ready for bed. I like to do that in a kind of relaxed manner. And then when I want to actually get into bed, I'm just turning the light out, and I laid there. And you know what? Oh my goodness, it is really helping. I'm falling asleep quite quickly, actually. And I still wake up once in the night usually, because I guess I'm getting 5 to 6 hours though now, I notice, which was stretched from what I was getting. I wake up sometimes because I need a wee. Sometimes I just naturally wake around 4:30. It seems to be that sort of, again, I think this is a symptom of menopause. But I found I am going back to sleep more quickly. I think what I'm finding is I'm dropping off to sleep. My brain isn't flashing with stimulation. And every night I go up, I think, oh, boring, I've got to get into bed and I'm not allowed to look at anything. And I get into bed, and as soon as I've got into bed, I'm like, oh, this is nice. This is comfy. I pull the quilt up, and Stuart might read or whatever, and that's fair enough. Because I'm a bit of a snuggler. I like to sleep with my head right under the covers, so I don't see the light anyway. And it's really helping, really, really helping. I think I'm getting more quality sleep. I think I feel more energized. I do wonder if in some ways that was what, in a strange way, oh, sorry, I just noticed it's got really dark outside. I'm sorry, the light's shocking, isn't it? Maybe like why my mental health, I was a bit more, maybe I'm letting go of some sort of stuff. But yeah, it's helping, and it just takes the decision out of it. And that's what I need sometimes. I take decisions out of things. I make a parameters like I did with the way I eat, and that's it. And so now I don't have anything in bed. I do read in the day. I'm reading my books in the daytime, and I've been using the phone in the day. I'm trying to cut that down. But anyway, it's all helping. It's all helping. And I think getting more sleep is only going to be beneficial for my mental and physical health. Anyway, that was all a bit of a ramble, wasn't it? So going into November, I'm not going to set a challenge other than to continue working on my creativity, my arts and crafts, which I've sort of already started. I'm not going to set a specific challenge because I'm going to Paris, yahoo, and I'm going to be working on creativity, and I'm going to be obviously thinking about Christmas prep. So anyway, I think that's all I've got to say for today. I'd love it if you'd give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And I shall be back again on Saturday, Sunday, I think, with another video. All right, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.